Punk Revolution now. Today we're reviewing Stabscotch's newest album, Prison Jar. Stabscotch is a very nerdy, very interesting band. They've definitely have accumulated quite a following because they are making some really experimental, really heavy, really challenging music. Back in 2017, they released their album Uncanny Valley. That's when I first heard of them, was their album Uncanny Valley, which is over 100 minutes of music, which is like 3 times longer than a lot of albums coming out today. Really complex post-hardcore with complicated time signatures, really sludgy, really heavy, very aggressive vocal delivery. Just a massive, challenging record. The music critic Piero Scaruffi gave an 8 out of 10, which is a really strange thing because Piero Scaruffi is an Italian music critic who, you might think 8 out of 10 is not a big deal, but he gives the majority of the records he reviews like a 6 out of 10. And if you get a 7 out of 10 from Piero Scaruffi, that means your album is like incredibly good. So him giving an 8 out of 10 is kind of his way of saying that Uncanny Valley, in his opinion, is one of the greatest albums of the decade. Out of nowhere, just Italian music critic finds this obscure band that releases this massive, really complex, noisy, aggressive, abrasive record, gives it an 8 out of 10. All of a sudden, a bunch of music nerds who care about what Piero Scaruffi says is following this band. I listen to it. I'm impressed. And here they are in 2022 with their album Prison Jar. I did reference this album while I was reviewing Black Midi's album Hellfire. I was just kind of making a very pretentious point about, oh, why does everyone care so much about Black Midi when there's so many amazing experimental rock bands that completely fly under everyone's radar? Just me being a pretentious D-bag. Let me be a pretentious D-bag. I'm a music critic. I get to be pretentious. A decent amount of people were like, yo, you should review Stabscotch. You should review Stabscotch. And I'm like, oh, wow. If there's a Venn diagram of people who are Punk Revolution Now fans and Stabscotch fans, if you're in that Venn diagram, if you're in that overlap, you are a hardcore music nerd, and I appreciate you, and I love you. So I'm going to review Stabscotch, and I actually do. I really enjoy this kind of music, so I enjoy reviewing it. So let's get started by taking a look at the album cover. This album cover completely caught me off guard when I first looked at it because it looks like a Blade album cover, some sort of cloud rap album cover, but it's Stabscotch who makes like noise rock, post-hardcore, avant-garde experimental rock that's like sludgy and heavy as heck. So I'm thinking, okay, they're trolling. You're releasing an album called Prison Jar. Prison Jar to me sounds like a psychological horror, gruesome, gory film that stinks, but you can't help but love it, and it has some deep, abstract concept about our brains being in a prison of a jar. And then you have this beautiful cover, so the contrast is quite interesting. I am perplexed, but that is just Stabscotch being classic Stabscotch, just throwing all sorts of weird crap at you. I press play on this album, I listen through it, and I am just dumbfounded. The first time I listened to this album, I'm like, you know what? I don't know if I liked it. I don't want to review it because it's just too dense. It's just too complicated. Okay, so I love experimental rock. I love avant-garde, nutty, progressive rock, jazz rock, whatever you want to call it. I love that music. This is how in Prison Jar, it's like, they're just you don't know what's coming next. You're listening to one thing, there's auto-tune on top of a crazy jazzy bass line that's like distorted and heavy, and then there's like weird electronics that come in, and then there's shoegaze, and then there's it's just throwing all this stuff at you, and I'm like, my brain can't process it, and I'm like, I don't think I liked that. I like experimental bands experimenting as much as they can, but there's also a limit. Like, I'm a human being. I need like things in songs that I can grasp, and not just random chaos being thrown at me, because honestly, being a band just doing a bunch of random chaotic stuff is frankly pretty easy and not very impressive. So I was like, I don't know if I like this. That was a lot. But I re-listened to it, and the second time I listened to it, I freaking loved it. It clicked hard. Because the first time I was listening to it, even though nothing was sticking because it just felt so like everything just pounding my face, the second time I was like, oh, you know what? I actually remember this little riff here. Oh, I remember this sample here. I remember this weird shoegaze part here. I remember, it actually wasn't just a bunch of random chaos. Like, I'm able to actually anticipate what's coming next on my second listen, and I'm not gonna lie. I've listened to this record 5, 6, 7 times now, and it's still throwing me a bunch of curveballs. But at the very least, it's curveballs that like leave me with a smile because I'm like, oh yeah, it's that crazy part of the album, and not like a curveball that's just like, You know what I mean? Like a horror, you don't want to watch a horror film that's just a bunch of jump scares. You got to have some crazy, fun suspense built up. That's kind of this album. But I need to make it clear, though, like, this album, it's not just, like, it's so hard to articulate what the heck is going on here. There's saxophones, there's weird electronics and auto-tune. Like, yes, you have this album cover that screams like Blade or something like that. And I wouldn't say it sounds anything like Blade, but you do get some electronics coming in that certainly remind you of very contemporary, maybe like hyperpop. Like, there's no hyperpop on this, but the way it's just so, like, aggressive electronic pop at times definitely has a very, like, contemporary experimental pop vibe on it. Once in a while, there's also, like, saxophones and jazz in it, and then the vocalist is just aggressively belting these. I mean, he's a fantastic vocalist. Sounds literally insane. Sounds like really he sounds like a dangerous guy. And these lyrics are so vulgar. They're very perverted, very, like, aggressively just letting you know he wants to have sex. Like, that's like the lyrics of the album, just really perverted lyrics. And it's like, oh my God, like, you're just getting this album is pounding you with all these different genres and crazy riffs that are so dissonant and improvisation, and it's all incredibly skillful. And then you have this aggressive dude yelling, like he's like, imagine someone's just yelling at you about how bad he wants to have sex. That's what's going on, and I love it because it's kind of vile. It kind of makes you uncomfortable. It makes you like, oh, and that's kind of what experimental rock is supposed to be. Like, no one wants to hear an experimental rock song about, I don't know, going to a race and watching a race. I want to listen to an experimental rock song where you are getting assaulted by just the band just throwing so much talent and creativity at you. And then also you're getting, like, these vulgar, extremely just I mean, they're not like, you know, they're not like rapey, they're not like cancel lyrics. They're just like they're just making you really uncomfortable, and it's I like it. It challenges you. And I want to make it clear, though, like, I know this all sounds very pretentious, but I literally am going through the day with, like, little parts of this album stuck in my head. Like, I want to go back and listen to it, and it's actually put together very thoughtfully. Like, there's parts of this album where you might get, like in the midst of all this insanity, like, just a beautiful shoegaze just moment that just sounds like gorgeous. Just an absolutely, it's like, what? You're making this experimental rock avant-garde music no one's gonna like, and you're capable of playing that? And for me, I love it because it's like you've got all this tension and intensity, and then this album gives you a breath of fresh air, of something gorgeous, maybe a gorgeous kind of like post-hardcore slinty riff that kind of quiets down, and it's like, oh, that's so beautiful, and then it's back to just fuck. Like, to me, this album is like if the mathcore band Vane, you should check out their album Arizona, if Vane had a baby with Captain Beefheart, and this was a hideous, disgusting baby that was deformed, and then someone came over and sprinkled like a little bit of beautiful sparkles on top of the baby. The way the songs consistently move around and have that aggression definitely feels very mathcore. Like, I wouldn't say it's mathcore at all, but it kind of approaches songwriting in a similar way that mathcore does, and it has that angst that mathcore has. And then I'm not kidding when I say this, there's like sparkles on it, because there's like beautiful, like really, I don't know how they made this, like gorgeous electronics. I always love a record where I can't tell how exactly it was made. I really don't know exactly what the process was here. A lot of these electronics, it's not like they just have a song and then they just happen to like produce an electronic sound on it. I mean, maybe that's what they did, but to me, all the electronics that are incorporated all sound very like integrated into the song properly. Like, maybe they're using some really insane guitar effects or something, or just stepping on a pedal to turn some insane vocal effect on. I don't know. It's like a mystery. It's a mystery that is, believe it or not, as much as when I listen to it, I actually am like floored. Like, wow, I really enjoyed that. Wow, that plot twist there. Wow, Family Guy, freaking hilarious Family Guy, multiple Family Guy samples, which is punk because that's against the rules. You're not allowed to sample Family Guy, but Family Guy is hilarious. It's one of my favorite shows. Family Guy is punk. This is obviously a record that is just poison. No record label in the world is gonna touch this. But that's what, like, okay, so when you see an experimental rock record that's like topping the charts, got big record labels pushing it, they're touring all around the world, you should kind of think, why is that? What's so experimental about a product that is being picked up and pushed by some of the biggest record labels? Stabscotch is the antithesis of that. They are there's no way, we don't want a filthy record label to touch us. We're going to make disgusting, vile music, and we're going to have way more fun doing it. We're gonna make something that just sounds unlike anything else anyone has ever made. I can't think of a record that sounds anything like this. What genre is this? I'd say jazz punk mostly, but I can't really say exactly what genre it is. That's pretty, I mean, that's avant-garde music right there. So really, really enjoyed this record. Stunned by the talent. Love the plot twists, the beautiful riffs that are mixed into the chaos, the vocals, the lyrics. It's all just like, I'm perplexed. I'm perplexed by this album. I love when I get perplexed. I actually prefer this more than Uncanny Valley personally, so I'm giving this an 8.5 out of 10. I really enjoy listening to it. The band sounds like they're having fun. I'm having fun. It's an incredibly unique record. There's a lot of good stuff in it, okay? And I think a lot of people are just not gonna like this record ever. But if you're into avant-garde music, if you're into experimental rock, if you're into appreciating music as an art form, I really think you should give this record a go. It's 50 minutes long, so still pretty long record, pretty dense, but I think it's more digestible than Uncanny Valley just because of how long Uncanny Valley is. But just listen to the first two songs and you'll be like, Punk Revolution Now is not kidding around. This is a impenetrable album, but I penetrated it, so it is penetratable, and I love it. So 8.5 out of 10. Great job, Stabscotch. And shout out to all the Stabscotch fans who are also Punk Revolution Now subscribers. That's pretty epic. Two obscure indie music communities collide into one. So thanks so much for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe. Screw you, Anthony Fantano. Go ahead, give your Black Media 9 out of 10. We're giving some epic scores to Stabscotch on Punk Revolution Now because it's punk. Thanks so much for watching Punk Revolution Now.